Welcome, everyone. I'm Shelley Emling, the editor of the Girlfriend newsletter from AARP. I'm also the moderator of the Girlfriend Book Club, which now has about 60,000 members. And I'm so pleased to say that. And thank you guys for being members of the Girlfriend Book Club. Every month, you all choose a new book. And it's a rigorous process, a 2-day process to vote on our next book. And for March, you all chose Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. And I'm so pleased. Every month, you guys surprise me. I never know if I'm going to really like the book. And then every time I read whatever you guys have picked, it's like my favorite book of all time. It's wonderful. And this time you guys knocked it out of the park. So I'm so pleased that you picked Demon Copperhead. And I'm also so pleased that we have Barbara Kingsolver here with us tonight to talk about this wonderful one of the best books of the last few years, for sure. So welcome, Barbara Kingsolver.
Hi, thank you.
Hello.
Thanks for inviting me here. And thanks all of you readers out there for voting for Demon. I hope you like him.
Well, I think everybody does. I should have also said that you've written 17 books, and also Poisonwood Bible was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize and the Orange Prize, and all your other books have won multiple awards. So I should have said that as well. And I think what was it? You were named one of the most important writers of the 20th century by Writer's Digest, and certainly I would agree with that. So, you know, having you here is such an honor. I can't even tell you.
Thanks. Well, it's really easy for me to be here since I'm actually sitting at my desk in my office. So thank you for doing it on Zoom. I love this, actually, I love that we learned in the pandemic that we can be together without burning jet fuel and flying all over the place.
Yeah. It's making things much easier. Yes.
Yeah. And it allows me to be more available. You know, it used to be when I was invited to, go to this book club and that book club.
It was harder.
I couldn't fly everywhere because, it's not possible.
So everyone that's read Demon Copperhead, I think, read in your acknowledgments that it was based, or is a twist on Dickens' David Copperfield. So I just wondered when that idea, was that a favorite book of yours for when you were a kid or younger, or for over the years, or when it was the moment when you thought, I'm going to do a modern twist on this book?
Well, you're going to be surprised by this. It was not my favorite book. It was never my favorite book. Which is not to say it was my unfavorite book, but I was a Dickens fan since I was about 12 and read A Christmas Carol and was just completely taken with what we all love about Dickens, his characters, his pathos, his comedy. I loved A Christmas Carol so much that I talked my siblings into. I wrote a like, I guess you'd say, a screen. I adapted A Christmas Carol. I wrote a script for a puppet play, and I talked my brother and sister into making puppets, and we kind of petered out around the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. So this was never performed, but that's just to tell you how Dickens captured my imagination when I was really pretty young. And so I really always loved, I welcomed, I was the nerdy kid in high school who said, yay, we get to read Great Expectations. So I loved Great Expectations. I loved Tale of Two Cities. Those are the two, like, in the US, those are the two you read. But I went beyond that. I read a lot of Dickens, but I had never chosen David Copperfield as my favorite. And I don't think most people do, except for Charles Dickens. It was his favorite of his works because it was the most autobiographical. He lived that miserable childhood. His parents, his father was put in debtor's prison. That's what they did back then. And he was kind of a throwaway kid. He had to work. He was drafted into child labor. He had to work in a bootblack factory when he was, very, very small and horrible working conditions, as you can imagine. So he grew up poor, and he grew up angry at the way Victorian society treated children, and is just sort of angry about the institutional poverty of his society, these people who are born into a system that they can't escape. So a lot of his work, if you think about it, kind of channels that frustration and that anger. Oliver Twist, he's like Little Dora a lot. He writes about orphans a lot. So I was not thinking about Dickens when I started thinking about this book. I live in Southwest Virginia, right, a county away from Lee County, where Demon Copperhead is set. I have been thinking and I love where I live. I love Southern Appalachia. It gets a bad rap, if it gets any rap at all, in national media. If we show up at all in on TV or in movies, we are stereotyped as stupid hillbillies, toothless, dumb, ignorant, bigoted. And that makes me mad. And I feel, as a Southern Appalachian, I feel this compunction to represent my people, and to represent us honestly and with respect, and also to explore our challenges. And our challenges, in addition to a long history of exploitation of this region, and institutional poverty, structural poverty that has been done to us. The latest in these episodes of exploitation is the opioid crisis. This is something that was done to us on purpose by, the pharmaceutical companies. I wanted to tell that story.
Yeah.
It's a really depressing story. And my job as a writer is not to depress you. I mean, I want to inform you, but I have to do that in a way that also, makes you want to keep turning pages. I have to entertain you. I have to engage you. I have to make you, laugh as well as cry and keep caring. And I spent several years trying to figure out how to tell this story, the story of my people and of the opioid epidemic, without making it just unreadable, and aware that I'm working against some stereotypes, not just stereotypes about Appalachians, stereotypes about addicted people and drug addiction, and like the sort of the moral judgment people make about addiction. All that, it seemed hopeless. I had to write this book. I didn't know how to get, this was a house I could see, and I couldn't find the key to get in the door. Well, at the end of my book tour for Unsheltered, I was exhausted. I was in the UK. I'd finished the UK leg of the tour, and I had a weekend to kill before flying home. And I booked myself into a bed and breakfast, or like an inn, called Bleak House, which was really actually Bleak House. It's where Charles Dickens lived.
Oh, wow.
And where he wrote David Copperfield. And so when I checked in, I thought, how Dickensy can it really be? It was really Dickensy. It was like, it was this bleak looking mansion on a cliff overlooking the sea. And it was November. So it was stormy. It was sleeting. I, knocked on the door. It opens, and here's like Bob Cratchit behind the desk. It was like everybody. It wasn't like Comic-Con. These people were really, they seem like Dickens characters. This tiny little woman comes, I'm not kidding, limping down the hallway, offering to carry my bags. I said, I can get this. So I was, there was nobody else in the hotel except me and my husband in this big house. So they said, sure, they gave us the run of the place, go wherever you want to. And Dickens's study was there at the end of the hall, of the upstairs hall. There was his desk. There was all this stuff around, manuscripts, and that's the desk where he wrote David Copperfield.
Oh,
it was late at night, and I was sitting at that desk, and I was having this sort of tormented conversation with myself about how to write a story about, thrown away kids and a society that doesn't care. And it's like he spoke to me. He said, are you kidding me? You think this can't be done? You let the child tell the story. That's what I say. And I just realized, okay, I could use David Copperfield as a template. And I started and I had this vision of this red-haired kid named Demon. He's called Copperhead because of his hair. And I started writing this novel on Dickens's desk that very night.
Oh my gosh. Well, I have to read you. I mean, our members of the Girlfriend Book Club have said how this is like their favorite book of all time, their favorite book of the past 5 years. But one person in particular, Mary Lou, she said, I just had to share a reading adventure I've been having. When I first heard Barbara Kingsolver in a podcast explain how she had written Demon Copperhead, inspired by David Copperfield, I decided to read David Copperfield at the same time I'm reading Demon Copperhead. And she said, I have always admired Barbara Kingsolver as a brilliant novelist, but this lady is a freaking genius. What a jolt of pleasure when a Dickens character or scene shows up in modern guise. Both authors are harsh social critics, and they take on the educational system, child labor, the foster care system, and the opioid crisis. And they are both incredible. So it's just one example of like so many comments within the Girlfriend Book Club about you and this book, about how incredible it was. So
well, thanks. Well, I do want to stress that you do not have to read David
right.
Copperfield first or second or at all. You know, Demon stands on his own. That was really important to me. But if you also read David Copperfield, you'll see that this wasn't just, inspired by, this wasn't just like a loose allegory. This is chapter by chapter.
Yeah.
I just did this as an exercise to get myself started, to see how far it would go. And it turned into this amazingly, like, extremely difficult, but also really fun challenge. I had basically a spreadsheet where I put a cell for every chapter of David Copperfield, in which I wrote, like a sentence of what happens, character, action. And then underneath it, I put a cell for my book, what the character's name would be and what the action was. And so translating, like, what's the modern equivalent of a bootblack factory? Well, it's a gas and go with the meth lab in the back, just like figuring out and sort of what's the small events, the big events, the large trajectories. The names were so much fun, and assisted by the fact that where I live here in Southern Appalachia, everybody goes by nicknames, men especially. It's very common for men to be known by a nickname, and not just at times or by certain people, but universally, to the extent that, like, in the obituary, their obituary will say William Stubby Borgwine, because Stubby is the only name that people know him by. And I should also say these nicknames are never flattering. They're like Stumpy, Blabber. They're just like
not good.
It's just a thing. And so, as Demon says, you don't think a thing about it. You can buy a beer for your best friend Maggot and not think a thing about it. So that made it relatively easy. So I could take the character Steerforth, for example, from David Copperfield, and name him Fast Forward.
Right.
Agnes is named Angus.
Right.
Tommy is actually Tommy. That was he didn't change. But likewise, Rose. Some of them just were I just used directly. But Uriah Heep. That one stumped me for a while. Uriah Heep. I thought about that, and then I thought, well, a heap of things is a pile of things, and piles is a pretty common last name around here. So what nickname starts with U? U-Haul, because he's the assistant coach, or he's the coach's assistant, and he hauls all the the football stuff around. So U-Haul piles. The day I thought of that one, I was like, yes. So if you do read both books, you will see all my little yeses. They're sort of like private jokes between me and Charles Dickens, and it's kind of fun. But if you read David Copperfield first, you're going to know what happens. You will know the ending before you start, which could be a
Well,
good thing or a bad thing depending on how much you like
yeah.
suspense.
Well, I'm jumping ahead a little bit because I just want to ask this question of you, and I don't want to give anything away to the few people that might not have finished this book yet. But the ending was exactly the ending that I would have hoped it would be. So was that ending in your head from the beginning of the book? Did you know that's how it was going to end? Or
That ending
did it
was in
come to you
Charles
as you were writing it?
Dickens's head. I mean, that was written for me. But I mean, of course, if there had been any part of the plot of David Copperfield that didn't work, I would have strayed from it. And in fact, there are a few. I mean, if you think Demon Copperhead is long, David Copperfield is really long. And there were several kind of like sidewinding alleys that I just did not go down. I just skipped because I didn't want to write you a like an 800-page book. But the ending, the ending of David Copperfield is perfect. Actually, to tell you the truth, there was like an epilogue to David Copperfield that was just so saccharine that I just like dispensed with that. I didn't. It's like took the ending and then like put flowers all over it. So I didn't do that. And actually, we didn't need that. But this ending was perfect. The ending Dickens wrote, and I really studied. I writing this novel with Dickens sitting, right here beside my desk, just basically having Charles Dickens at my elbow was a masterclass in plot. Of course, I read David Copperfield forwards and backwards and inside out, and really thought about how he built that ending because you always, I mean, normally I write novels without, someone having without subcontracting my plot. Usually I invent my own plots from scratch. But so in this case, Dickens did what I always say you have to do with an ending is you have to know where you're going,
Right.
and then you write the whole book uh, in a way that it's like you're taking mirrors and reflecting the story towards that ending in very subtle ways so that like you're not giving it away but what you want to do, and this generally happens with successive drafts. Every draft is more sort of does this more perfectly so that you're aiming the reader's expectations in a way that they don't necessarily know or feel as they read. It's more subliminal, but you want to do that so that when the reader gets to the ending, it's like, I knew that was going to happen, but I really didn't know that was going to happen. Both things at once, which is what makes a really satisfying ending. If either of those is missing, if you fully didn't expect an ending on any level, then you feel ripped off. Likewise, if you knew it was coming, if you saw it coming, you feel ripped off because you didn't have to finish the book. So that's sort of as far as craft talk, that's kind of the game. And I really loved, because it has to do with, a connection between two characters, I loved developing this friendship, that's like an anti-romance in a certain way. Anyway, and I don't want to give more than that, but I will say that the character who's involved in the ending is, after Demon, probably my favorite character in the book.
I was going to ask you, which I always ask authors, what was there? I know you lived in Appalachia, you left, and then you came back. I mean, was there a scene or a character or subject matter in the book that you found more difficult than the others, really challenging, that you had to do more research about, or did it flow? I mean, I know you had Fast Forward, you had Tommy, you had U-Haul, you had the coach, Angus.
Right.
You had so many characters. Was there one particular character or scene that you did find more challenging than the others?
Well, two things. I'll talk about a character and then a subject matter. The character who was the hardest was Fast Forward, because he is a sociopath. And that's a really hard, I mean, if you've ever known one, you know, they're really difficult people to understand, even as humans. And you know, to write one from the inside out was very difficult. He's a very dangerous. He's in Dickens refers to him eventually as the dangerous friend. He's the dangerous friend, and you know he's dangerous, and you still need to love him, or at least you have to understand why Demon keeps hanging on to this friendship, or this wannabe friendship, why he keeps why it's so important to him that Steerforth's approval is so important to him, even though as a reader you're saying no, 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 back away. But you need to understand. And we've, you know, I think we've all been in that position at one time or another where we really want to be friends with this person that we know is toxic. So he was a challenge to write, but also, you know, kind of challenges are fun. The subject, the material that took a lot of research for me. Now, the place I know, the people, basically the vernacular, the way Demon talks, his teenage outlook, I knew all that. Like the back of my hand, because as I said, I'm Appalachian. I know my people. I know how we are. I know how we sound. But this book is a large part of this book deals with addiction, with opioid addiction. And while everything that happens in this book has happened to somebody I know, and I will tell you that I don't know any family around here that has been untouched by addiction. If you came to visit me and we walked down my road where I live, I could point out this house is where grandmother is raising her grandchildren because their parents are incarcerated or dead. Here and there and there. Some estimates are in some of these counties, 30% of kids are being raised by the foster care system, or anyway, someone other than their parents, because their parents are incarcerated or non-functional or dead. That's how serious it is. It's an epidemic. It's like the plague. It is a plague. It's so serious. And I'm really lucky that I haven't experienced opioid addiction firsthand, but I needed to know everything about it, beginning to end, you know, the logistics of that life. How does it begin? How does, so I became friends with Dr. Art Van Zee, who is a really important person. He's a physician in this region who was the first person actually to call out and start sounding the alarm of how addictive OxyContin is, even though it was marketed as an absolutely addiction-proof drug. And the company, you probably know all this by now, most people or many people know that the company actually produced false studies, fake information to really push these doctors to prescribe this drug, which is extremely addictive. And so I talked with him about what I was doing, and he put out a call to his patients, because most of his work now is treating addiction, and most of his patients are recovery patients. And so he put out a call to his patients and asked if anyone would like to talk with me, and several people did. And I spent many hours with these young people, and just to ask, you know, basic questions, like, here's a pill, how do I get this into my veins? You know, what are the steps? You know, I don't even know, like the cotton, the spoon, the fire, the needle, you know, everything. Where do the needles come from? Where do you get them? So I needed to know all this logistic information, but I also needed to know the sort of the heart story of, like, how did this happen? How did it feel? What's the worst of it? And every one of my informants who became friends, every one of them started with a prescription from a doctor. Yeah. Every one of them started with an injury, usually a work injury, a hand or leg injury, a sports injury. And the physician gave them, I mean, on the best of advice of the pharmaceutical company, gave them a bottle of pills and said, set your alarm clock, don't miss one, take it on the clock to stay ahead of the pain. And by the time they get to the end of the bottle, they are addicted.
Yeah.
So that they're not chasing a high. They need another pill so that they don't get dope sick, which is the
Right.
worst feeling you've ever had. It's like you have a panic attack, diarrhea, every muscle in your body hurts, pain, agony, fear. You need a pill to keep that away, and it's unbearable. And so I had to learn all of these things, what the life is like, what recover, how to get to the point of, being able to reach out for recovery. Of course, recovery facilities in our region are woefully almost non-existent. There's not enough help, and that's what we need is enough compassion and enough civil and political will to put some resources into helping people recover. So if this book can do one thing, I'm hoping that it can help counter the 50-year so-called war on drugs that has kind of brainwashed people into thinking that drug addicts are just bad people who need to be incarcerated. Incarceration doesn't cure addiction any more than it cures cancer. Addiction is a disease, and we need resources to help people be cured.
And in this book, you did really shine a light on foster care, which I have no experience with at all, actually, but about about the turnover rate and how woefully underpaid people are. I
Yep.
mean, did you? I guess you had to research that.
I did, and I'm fortunate that I have family members who are therapists and who work with kids in social services, and so I had some ins to learn about the so-called safety nets that are so terribly underfunded. And the biggest surprise to me, I would say, of all the things I learned when I was researching this book, the biggest surprise was that our foster care system is run as a for-profit business. So foster children are essentially products. And that is, and don't get me wrong, there are foster families, there are foster parents who do this for the right reasons,
right.
But there are a lot who don't. And because of the way the money works and everything, it's a really bad scene. And it's just like they're more, as I said, there's a huge population of kids whose parents can't raise them. So when you're so stressed, here's the other thing I guess I didn't realize is that when you're in foster care, your DSS worker is your legal guardian.
Yeah, I didn't realize that either.
And DSS workers are paid they're paid less than kindergarten teachers. They're paid just basically less than a living wage. So the turnover, DSS workers are all trying to get some other job. So the turnover is really high. So it's a very common circumstance for a foster kid to have a legal guardian who doesn't know his name, because these cases, the cases just turn over and files get lost and stuff. So it's common for a foster kid not to know who his legal guardian is, and likewise the legal guardian doesn't know who the kid is, if you can imagine that.
So you've written 17 books. Is this the most personal book you've written? Do you feel more for this book than others? Because I think I read that you said you are not that different from Demon.
I'm not that different from Demon. I grew up in the same. I was not raised in foster care. I was not raised in foster care. I'm not an orphan. I was raised by my parents, but I grew up in Southern Appalachia. I know the territory, and also for various reasons, I was bullied as a kid, and I know how it feels to never quite belong where you are. And I actually feel that to this day. I have imposter syndrome. I never, like, any like highfalutin event or party that I go to, I just always feel like they're gonna figure out that I don't belong here, and they're gonna kick me out. So so I understand Demon as a personality, I understand his longings, his his needs. I was much lucky. I did actually. I have spent. I know what it's like to go hungry. I have spent small parts of my childhood without enough to eat. And so, I could tap into those, those long ago parts of my hungry childhood, and pull them out to create Demon. And I do. So, yeah, I love him so much. I want to bring him here and cook for him. I want to take him to see the ocean. I feel like of all the characters I've ever invented, I mean, there are characters that are still under my skin. Ada Price, for example, from the Poison Oak Bible. Taylor Greer will always be with me. But Demon is special. I want to adopt him. I want to.
Yeah.
I want him to come sit in my kitchen while I make him soup.
Well, so I have just a couple last questions before we go, and these are from the audience, from our members themselves. I mean, obviously, everybody wants to know, what are you working on next, because they love your book. So, what's happening next?
Well, I do have a novel on the back burner. As I kind of hinted before, I told you that I was thinking about Demon Copperhead for a couple of years before it became Bing, Demon Copperhead. Likewise, I'm cooking a novel. I know what it's about. I know, sort of the large themes. I know, kind of, the basics of the plot and who the characters are. But I won't be right. I still have to think about it and structure it, work on the architecture for a year. And in the meantime, I'm working on adapting two of my novels. I can't tell you which ones. One as a feature film and one as a limited series.
Oh, that's so exciting. That's
Yeah,
great.
I like screenwriting. I like just as kind of as a break in between novels.
Yeah.
I like that it's collaborative because 99% of my work life takes place right here
Wow.
in this square meter of space
That's your
with all of the people that you see on my screen. Me, me, and them, and
so
nobody else. So
so
I
with
spend a lot of hours alone, and
yeah.
so it's kind of refreshing to work on a film and work with. And I'm really, really picky. I say no to like 50
Yeah.
requests for every one that I say yes to.
Yeah.
So if I'm working with people that I think are really smart and really creative, and I am learning from them, and working with directors who have an entirely visual,
Right.
creative imagination, whereas mine's verbal. It's just really fun. I enjoy it.
So did you with this particular book, Demon Copperhead, did you run this by, do you have your family, friends read it, people there in your neighborhood that kind of know the area? Did they give you any feedback? Is that how you work?
Yeah, I always ask for feedback from, well, my first reader is my husband, Stephen. He's my first and best reader. He has very low threshold for boredom. He likes things to
He wants it to
move.
be good from the get-go, from the
Yeah, yeah,
very
yeah.
yeah.
So I always give him like a first chapter or a first like 20 when I finally have the voice and I can
Yeah.
start writing the novel. I'll give him about 25 pages, and just see whether he's like, yeah, give me more, or okay, you could give me more or not. This time I'll never forget. I gave it to him. It was summer, and we were sitting on the porch. He sat down on the rocking chair on the porch, read it like this, and he said, I love this boy. I've never heard that before from him.
Yeah.
So yeah, of course, he reads the first draft of everything. When I had a sort of like the first third, maybe the first quarter of a draft, which deals a lot with social services, I gave it to my daughter to read, who works in that field, and she told me a lot of important stuff, just like details I would not have known, like when DSS picks a kid up, like from the hospital in this case, to take him to his foster home, there are always two. Who knows why? But they're two DSS
Yeah.
workers to do that. So just things like that, just details of how stuff works. Um, and then, of course, my informants who have who are recovering from addiction, they read and they gave me feedback.
Mhm.
Um, Dr. Van Z read it and gave me like medical feedback. And then after that, it goes through many drafts. Everything I write, I rewrite, between 5 and 70 times.
So
Every
how long did it
sentence.
take you to write this book?
Um, 3 years, I guess.
3 years.
I mean, that 3 years, that's from like Dickens's
Right.
desk
Yeah.
to the end, the draft that I turned in that became what you read. Before that, a couple of years of thinking.
Mm.
But after several drafts, then it goes to my agent who reads really beautifully and carefully and gives me a lot of feedback. I was very nervous to send this to New York. I
Mm.
can just tell you because I'm just so accustomed to Appalachians being, treated as a joke. I
Mhm.
was really, really nervous that not just my people in New York, but, people everywhere outside of this region would, I would not respect the people in my novel. And so I'm going to tell you, readers, thank you. Thank you for giving us a chance. Thank you for putting aside the hillbilly presumptions, and listening, because this is who we really are. We are not one kind of person.
Right.
We're not one color. We're not one political party. We are all kinds of people. We are the Murdstone. I use this Dickensian name, not Murdstone. We are the Stoners, unfortunately, and we're also the June Peggotts, and we are the grandmothers. We are the Mrs. Peggotts. Mainly, we're ecosystems of characters. We're ecosystems of people who are held together by women who cook, basically.
Well, June was a great character, but I
I love
digress.
June.
Right.
Yeah.
Just two more questions for you.
Okay.
I mean, I guess, so in your spare time when you're not, writing, reading, what do you do for fun? The Girlfriend is all about female friendship and the power of female friendship, especially as we grow older.
Okay.
So do you get together with girlfriends on occasion? Are they other authors? Or your girlfriends other authors? I'm curious as to what you do for fun when you're not writing and reading.
Well, I'll answer that. Well, I live on a farm, and it's a real farm, it's a working farm. So at times, what I do, whether you call it for fun or just the other thing I do besides sit at this desk, is I'm down in the barn delivering lambs, or I'm up in the garden pulling weeds, and I really love farm life. It's very physical. It's a good counterbalance to the physically unhealthy act of sitting at this desk hunched over, like,
Right.
back problems. Actually, I have a standing desk. I'm sitting now, but I can lift it, so I stand.
Oh, that's good.
Okay.
Good for you.
Okay.
I have not
So,
mastered the standing desk yet, but go ahead.
it's if you can stand, you can do it. So I write and I farm, and farming is collaborative. We have wonderful farming neighbors. We have actually a whole community around us of young agrarians. Um, People in their 20s and 30s who have come to organic farming, and we exchange labor with them and stuff like that.
That's
But
great.
my other thing that I do is I knit. I am a knitter, and that is my social outlet, because I knit with other women. um, I have a knitting group, well, we actually fell apart during the pandemic, but we're going to get back together. That gets together every week, and we knit together. And the wonderful thing about knitting is that you can knit and talk, and and you can drink wine. So not in a limited way, if you
Yeah.
as long as you want to keep your knitting on track. But yeah, my girlfriend group is my knitting club.
Oh,
Knitting group.
well, I just started crocheting, which I think is a little bit easier than knitting, but anyway.
Well, it can be as easy or as hard as you want to make it. Knitting is also can be really easy or really hard. Usually I have some knitting sitting right here by my desk for like my thoughtful moments, because it's very meditative.
Yeah.
But right now, I don't have any knitting here. I would show you otherwise what I was knitting.
And so everybody in the book club wants to know, is there an author that inspires you? Is there a book that blew your mind of the past year? I mean, is there anything you could recommend to the readers uh,
Oh my
to
gosh,
read
so
or
many. I mean, look, all of these. So, I hate to answer that question because there are so
so many?
many
Yeah,
uh, that if I start naming, then I leave people
somebody
out.
else.
But I just read uh, and then I go blank. Let me okay. Let me take a quick look here. Let me read off my recent reads that I really love. Right now I'm reading Even as We Breathe by Annette Suk Clapsaddle.
I haven't read
She's a
that one.
she's
That's
a
good.
Cherokee.
Okay.
She's from this region. She's a Cherokee author.
Okay.
Um, but let me just go back. Okay, what did I love? I loved Geraldine Brooks' Horse.
Oh yeah, that
Really
is a favorite. That's amazing.
I
Yeah,
loved Tomorrow and Tomorrow
mm,
and Tomorrow
another
by
favorite.
Kimberly
Yeah.
Morgan. I loved this was We All Want Impossible Things by Catherine Newman.
Mm.
Um, let me see. Let me go back. Oh my gosh, Cloud Cuckoo Land. That was
Mm.
probably my favorite book of last year.
Oh,
Sea of Tranquility
yeah,
by Emily St. John Mandel. Lauren Groff's Matrix. Um, Cast, of course, by
yeah.
Isabel
That was
Wilkerson.
yeah.
Louise Erdrich, The Sentence. Um, let me see what else. Is that a good start?
That's good. That's
Uh,
really
in my whole big life, the probably some of the authors most influential for me, most like formative for me, were Doris Lessing. I've
mm,
read pretty much everything, and that's a lot. I started of all things. I started with her earliest books, her Martha Quest books, The Children of Violence. I read them when I was like in my later teens, and they blew my mind. I haven't reread them. I don't know how I would read them now, but I really loved those novels. John Steinbeck. Um, Cannery Row was a book that made me feel like I could write a novel
mm.
because when I was younger, I thought novels have to be about like heroes or important, mainly famous people, and I don't know anybody like that. And when I read Cannery Row, it was like, oh, these are all just really ordinary people, like the people I live among, and they're together they make this heroic story, and I'd like to try to write a book like that. So those are some answers.
All right. One final question, and this is just my question to you because I'm just curious. It's a personal question. You know, I'm not sure exactly how you grew up, but I mean, now you have Oprah Winfrey describing Demon Copperhead as one of the greatest novels of our time. So, what is it like for you? You are actually, one of the few celebrity. I don't say that lightly. Celebrity authors that I've interviewed. What is that like for you to get that kind of acclaim? I mean, are your two daughters blown away by that? I'm just wondering personally.
To my two daughters, I'm mom. Um, to my friends, I'm Barbara. To my neighbors, I mean, some of the people in my neighborhood probably don't even know what I do for a living. They are wondering if I'm ever going to get a job because I don't seem to leave the hollow very often. I mean, I live on a farm.
That's pretty amazing. I
I
mean,
have dirty fingernails a lot of the time. There are moments when my life is surreal. Like it seems like anytime I have to go do something really important, like have lunch with Obama while he was still president, the night before I have to do something like really gritty. Like the night before that, we had to harvest turkeys. So when I went to shake hands with Mr. Obama, I was hoping that my fingernails were clean. Um,
that's what I'm
uh,
talking about.
like like before the White House, you have to like process 5,000 onions, not 5,000, 500 onions, and so you hope you don't smell like onions. I just mostly I live my life here in this place, very grounded, literally grounded. I love having my feet on the ground and my hands in the dirt when they're not on a keyboard. And that's the life I love. And I never wanted to be like wealthy. That if you want to be wealthy, you don't become an artist. That's just not the way to find it. But because this this I guess you'd say success has come to me, it gives me the opportunity to move those resources into other. So I donate most of what I earn to environmental organizations, or the Bellwether Prize for Fiction, which a prize I founded to establish other writers' careers, or women's rights, or humanitarian causes, environmental causes. So that's the good thing. But what I do, the hardest thing for me is to go on book tour, because in the culture in which I was raised, you don't promote yourself.
Right.
It's a fundamental of Appalachian culture is modesty. When you tell a story, the punchline is always a joke on you. That's just how we are. Women, even more than men. When women bring a dish to the table, we always say, I probably put too much salt in this. That is just how we are. And one of the aphorisms that I heard a lot when I was a child was, don't go parading yourself around. Or she's parading herself around,
Right.
which is not what you do. So on book tour, all I hear is, I'm parading myself around. It's really hard. So what I try to do to make, and that's kind of what I told you about imposter syndrome. I get on a stage in front of 1,000 people and I feel like I am no different from any of you. I don't belong on this stage. So what I try to do is like take a mirror and say, we're not talking about me here. We're talking about Demon, Copperhead.
Right.
We're talking about
Yeah.
Appalachia. We're talking about addiction. What my books are always about something that I care about a lot, something in the world that I want other people to think about with me. And so I just try to shine, that deflect that, whatever that is, that attention onto that thing. And that's how I survive.
Thank you so much. That was really interesting. So the book is Demon Copperhead. For those of you, like 2 people out there that haven't actually purchased this book, go buy it. It's one of the best reads of the last year, if not the best read of the last year. So Barbara Kingsolver, I'm so thrilled and honored that you joined us today for the Girlfriend Book Club discussion. And
Thank
for
you.
everybody that's a member, all you 60,000 people, please stay on, because after this discussion, I'll be posting some conversation starters so that you guys can like talk about what you loved most about this book. So thank you all so much. Thank you. And I can't wait to read what comes from you next.
Thank you. And thank all of you readers for being readers. It's the best.